Time now for another vlog, and normally I try to post the vlogs every 2 or 3 weeks on Mondays, but this is a special day in history, the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 11th, 1918, World War I, the Great War, the war to end all wars, officially ended. And if we go by this link from the Encyclopedia Britannica, armed forces mobilized and casualties in World War I. We're not going to go over all these numbers, but I thought it'd be interesting just to look at the grand total, and bear in mind that we're going to focus on killed and died. So killed and died, total casualties. So this is the total number killed between the Central Powers and the Entente, the Allied Powers. Over 8.5 million dead. Total casualties, 37.4 million. That's a war that most of us don't really think much about, because unless reincarnation is a thing, or if you were alive 100 years ago, which would make you kind of old right now, so you'd have been very young, or you have to be an immortal, maybe a Highlander, I don't know. But either way, chances are most of us, with a probably very small percentage of the population, were not around to see Armistice Day 100 years ago today, unless reincarnation is in fact a thing. Now, what's interesting about the death toll from World War I is that it was quickly overshadowed by the 1819 influenza epidemic, which killed between 50 and 100 million people worldwide, which is kind of humbling, because despite our best efforts to kill each other in the Great War, you know, the Central Powers, the Entente, with these advanced weapons of their time in trench warfare on the Western Front and fighting on horses in the Eastern Front, and of course all the way over in the battles against the Ottoman Empire, despite the fact that the death toll was relatively high, and at the time the largest in any war at this point historically, the Spanish flu in 1918 killed way more people across the world. Of course, you could actually tie these two in together, just like it does in this Wikipedia article. While it's also considered a contributory factor in a number of genocides and the 1918 influenza epidemic, which caused between 50 to 100 million deaths worldwide. So it's very possible that one also led to the other, that maybe less people would have died, maybe there wouldn't have been the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918 if World War I never happened. But as they say, the rest is history. What can we learn from World War I? What can we learn from this day 100 years ago, when the world finally stopped fighting after 4 years? Yeah, I know we've seen wars that have lasted longer than 4 years. And of course, we've had the Second World War, which you could say was the result of the way the Germans were treated by the Allies at the end of World War I. They were given very, very strict punishments, and unfortunately that caused serious issues in the newly formed Weimar Republic, which led to several factions rising up trying to seize control. First off, the Communists, and of course the National Workers' Party, which became the Nazis, and we know how that turned out. So, you know, history does have a way of connecting together, kind of like a domino effect. Similar to what led up to the First World War, you had a buildup of powers. On one side, you had the Central Powers, German Empire, Austro-Hungary Empire, Ottoman Empire, a few others as well. On the other side, the Triple Entente, which was centered around Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Japan, a few others as well, and the United States declaring war in 1917, 3 years after the war began. But despite the buildup and treaties on both sides, what sparked the war was an assassination of an archduke and his wife. And that just set the ball rolling, similar to what we talked about a moment ago, the domino effect. You had one nation declare war on another nation, and so on and so on, and there you had it. Allied powers, triple entente versus Central powers. End result, millions of people worldwide dead. And the war to end all wars, unfortunately, was not the war to end all wars. And in hindsight, it should have been a lesson for us all to learn, in the hopes that going forward, there would be no wars. But I don't think I have to point out the reality that World War I, or at the time, the Great War, the First World War, was not the last war. We've had World War II, we had the Korean War, Vietnam War, the War on Terror, the Cold War, a few other wars scattered in there as well. But if we can look at it from a positive point of view, maybe we have learned a little bit from World War I. We haven't had a war that bad since World War II, the sequel. Hopefully we'll never have a third one, even though there's always been that fear that a third world war would eventually break out. That was a common issue during the Cold War, the War on Terror most recently, the strife that we currently have in the world right now with the United States and the West versus Russia, China, Iran, and some other countries as well. So there's always this very scary possibility that eventually something could transpire in the world today or tomorrow that could result in a third world war. But as a certain genius once said after the invention of the atom bomb, I don't know what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Hopefully there won't be a World War III or IV, but I fear that wars will continue throughout the world. It's a sad history that we, the human race, seems to have, going way back, hundreds of years, thousands of years, all the way back to the ancient empires, Romans, the Carthaginians, the Trojans, the various Greek states, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, Sumerians, Aztecs, Mayans, the Mongolians, the Middle Kingdom, the Chinese kingdoms of the past, medieval times. Sadly, even Native American tribes fought each other long before European settlers came over to the New World. It doesn't justify what they ended up doing to the Native American population, but the reality is human beings, it doesn't matter what continent you go by, whether it's North America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Middle East, South America, etc. Human beings have this inherent nature to fight and kill each other for whatever rhyme or reason. And it probably goes beyond the ancient empires, all the way back to when we were simply tribes fighting over resources like food and water and the right to mate and reproduce, fighting over caves or trees or whatever the hell we fought for back in the day. Unfortunately, humanity likes to fight. Unfortunately, humanity likes to go to war with each other for reasons. Whether it's, like I mentioned, various obvious raw materials that are needed, food, water, land, because of alliances with other nations that end up in war with other nations that have alliances with other nations as well, causing a domino effect, just like with World War I. Or you have ideologies that rise to power that have ambitions of slaughtering other peoples that they deem to be inferior or different or lesser, as well as delusions of grandeur for trying to conquer the world. And unfortunately, other countries around nations like that kind of sort of don't like that, and a lot of them are willing to fight back. I'm not saying that war is never justified. I would say there are a few exceptions throughout history where people had no choice but to take up arms and fight back. But most of the time, unfortunately, I feel like it could have been avoided peacefully through people actually coming to the table, talking, airing their grievances, find some sort of middle ground or common ground, solutions that did not result in war or deaths of thousands of people or millions of people. And that's what we have to learn from 100 years ago today. Because After 4 years of fighting, after millions of deaths throughout Europe and elsewhere from the Great War, the Central Powers, even though all that was really left was the German Empire, everyone else was basically whipped on the Central side, but people got tired of fighting. There was revolution happening in Germany, and you had soldiers and sailors in Germany that were starting to refuse to fight. They were mutinying. They were saying, no, we're done. We're tired of dying. We're tired of fighting in this war that we're obviously losing. And you probably had people on the other side, on the Allied side, the French, British, Americans, etc., tired of fighting and dying as well. And when I mean the British, I mean the British Empire and their various colonies, like from Canada, from Australia, New Zealand, India, elsewhere, that came to Europe to fight and die. It was, in fact, a First World War. Not as big a scale as World War II, but it was still a world war. So despite the fact that, obviously, war films and TV shows or miniseries based off war are quite popular, war novels, along with video games that are centered around war, like Call of Duty, along with, the Battlefield series. Battlefield 5 just came out, which is once again going back to World War II. I sincerely hope that we get to the point where we can get past the need to fight and kill each other. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetimes, but I think that we can take this moment reflecting on the past 100 years and ask ourselves, do we really want to eventually find ourselves in a third world war between whatever factions are going to be in the next war, if there is one? The end result, millions of people dead. If nukes are not even used, hopefully both sides could avoid using nukes, because that's going to kind of end things for all of us, not just humanity, but most of the species on the planet. Only by looking back at the lives that were lost in the First World War and understanding that so many of them were taken down in their youth, in their teens and early 20s, their entire lives gone in a blink of an eye by, going over the top or being hit by mortars or gas or machine gun fire or bayoneted. Their deaths will continue to be in vain if we do not learn from past mistakes. Failure to do so will result in only more military cemeteries throughout the world and more dead bodies laid to rest. And to be honest, I think we have enough graveyards already. If you have a suggestion for a future vlog, bear in mind we do post new vlogs every 2 or 3 weeks. Be sure and check the vlog playlist first. Then feel free and send your vlog suggestion my way via the comment section, Twitter, Facebook, or Discord. All the links to the Go Burns Nation below in the description section.